will go under review.
What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday evening, and thank you so much for being here for this week's episode of Under Review. My name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter/X at show_DeRosa. We are so back, folks. After 6.5 hours this past Saturday to cover day 3, we are back at regularly scheduled time. It is good to be here. I apologize. The brothel is gone, folks. The funeral home is gone. We're with the normal background now with the normal lights. So I apologize that I couldn't deliver on the green screen tonight, but it's all good. We're back up and running. Happy to be here. I have missed my Tuesday night slot, and I am so excited for this episode because, folks, the draft is come and gone. The Buffalo Bills have made their now 9 selections, and we have so much to discuss on tonight's episode about the 2025 Buffalo Bills draft class. And when I say we, of course, folks, I never just mean me. It's never just me on the show. I always have a guest. This is one of my favorite guests to bring on, an awesome person, an awesome analyst, someone who provides great insight. And that is the one and only draft extraordinaire, John Hancock. John, welcome back to the show, I should say. You were at the draft, and that is super cool. I am sad I couldn't join you this year, but other obligations were pressing, and I was unable to go. But you were able to go, have a great time. So I'm going to first ask you how you doing, how's life, and then I'm going to ask you, how'd the draft go, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm stoked to be here. I'm glad that we've had 4 or 5 days to kind of sit back and digest at this point and think about these draft picks and listen to Brandon Beane's ranting and see all the craziness in these Buffalo Bills streets online. And there's just a little bit to talk about. So I'm really excited to get into this. And the draft was great. The bubbly train kept going. I brought one with me this evening.
Oh,
the peach Bellini bubbly. Not a sponsor, hashtag. But yeah, man, the bubbly just keeps rolling and flowing, and it's good stuff, man. It's good. It's good to be here. We have a lot to digest, so much so that I still feel like stuff is swirling. I'm still like plucking nuggets out of the stratosphere to come up with some opinions.
I'm so glad you put it that way too, because the draft during, even right before, and the days after are always like a whirlwind of thought. Like even to a point where like I'm checking my phone thinking there's news. There's no news. It's just You're still kind of setting in the impact of the draft. And for this one, I mean, you had 9 picks. There's a lot to cover with it, but I'm glad you had a great time. Again, the draft was super cool when we went last year. I'm glad you got to experience it. And for those who are out of the loop, the bubbly train was because when we went last year in Radio Row, I drank 10 in a night, as well as had like 3 strawberry Uncrustables, like literally in the same night. And my stomach did not thank me the next day, but it was worth it. I would do it again every single time I'm able to go. What was your number, by the way, John? What did you hit? What was did you match me? Did you get 10?
I was trying to match the high watermark was 7 on back-to-back days though. So I crushed 14 bubblies over 2 days of the NFL draft.
Hell yeah.
Which I think is respectable.
It is. Definitely.
Not the 10. Not the 10. That's the benchmark that we aspire to. And you know what? I'll do some training next year. Maybe I'll have a bubbly combine in preparation for the draft. And then next year's in Pittsburgh, man. It's Yinzer City. So it's We got to hope that the catering brings back the bubbly for a 3rd straight year, and we can.
I was going to say
some bubbles.
2 years in a row. It's pretty promising. And that's a little more attainable. I mean, like for me, I'm, out on East, so it's a little more of a doable trip next time. So I'm hoping I can get back there because I loved it. It was so much fun. I mean, day one, being there in person, experiencing the atmosphere, and then like being there in Radio Row to like interact. There was so many cool people, seeing the prospects come in and get interviewed, like really good experience. So I lived vicariously through you, my friend. I'm glad you had fun. But
yeah, one last thing before we dive in. Max Hairston, he was the last 1st round pick of the prospects that was in the green room. So he was the last one to come up and do a podium with media availability after. So by that point, so many people had already left. There was maybe like 12 of us in the
Mhm.
media room for Hairston. Like that was it. So I got to get 3 questions into him, which was awesome. Getting to ask some questions of the Bills' first round selection. He didn't get to the podium until, oh
Like
god,
midnight?
had to have been like 12:15, 12:20, something like that. So
Dang.
I was in the workroom until 1:45 in the morning,
Mhm.
then get back a half hour drive to my podunk motel. Yeah, it was a late night, but well worth it. Just a blast. Cool to see Mad Max in person. He was just beaming from ear to ear. So excited about the selection. So excited to get back with his buddy Ray. Good
Yeah.
stuff. It was
And
good.
Deion.
Good to see him.
And
And
Deion,
Deion now.
another
Yeah.
buddy. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was I mean, just to spoil it, because day 3, that happened, and I was live with David Tilton when that was going on. And it wasn't what I expected. Not because I didn't expect him to address D-line again, but just that frame. But we'll get more into that as we get on. I brought this comment up from Roy because I feel like it's not something I want to spend too much time on, but worth discussing given the recent news cycle with Brandon Bean going on WGR and essentially um, saying some fun words to the hosts about the
Yeah.
wide receivers and the Bills not taking one until late. And it's really created discourse that, again, on day 3, I addressed when someone asked me about it and kind of said they were disappointed. But really, this idea that the Bills, should have taken a wide receiver earlier. Maybe they haven't given Josh enough weapons. Kind of the same mantra that's been going on for the past few seasons. So, John, I'm going to turn it to you and we can talk about this briefly as long as you like. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the Bills receiver room, their position in the draft, when it comes to how they've addressed it, I mean, what are your thoughts? Are you aligned with the side that they should be doing more for the receiving core for Josh? Or are you aligned with the side that they have done enough and really it wasn't as big of a need? And maybe the draft board just didn't fall their way to take anyone? Or are you somewhere in the middle? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah. I'm in the middle on it, and here's why. We know that Brandon Bean had 12 first round grades this year. Apparently, Maxwell Hairston was one of them, and they love him. They love his personality. They love his explosive speed. They love his ball skills when it's in the air, the production that's there. There's a lot to like. Brandon Bean said after the selection, hey, if he was a little bit bigger, he wouldn't have been here. The only reason that we got him is because of the slight size concern. So we know that there was only 12 first round grades. We know that Harrison was one that they had a first round grade on. If they didn't have a first round grade on any of the wide receivers that were available, which basically at that point would have just been Luther Burden, like he's the one that was still on the board. And I was talking about this on another show. I was saying if Burden is the pick, I get it, not because wide receiver is a screaming need, but because of the yak ability, which is such a priority
Mm-hmm.
of this offense, of what they're looking for, of Joe Brady's scheme, of everything. Like he would be a really good fit in this offense. But it just comes down to the fact that they had a first round grade on a corner, which is a direct need, and
Yep.
they went that route. So then on day 2, they didn't see the value. They saw the value at other positions that were also still positions in need. People have been talking about it. Like I put the tweet out. I'm like, since the second the AFC Championship game has ended, people are like, Brandon Bean better attack the defensive line and cornerback too. And then that's exactly what he did. And now people are pissed. It's like there's no winning with some of you people. And I don't understand. Like, I totally get Bean's frustration. Him mouthing off, honestly, I love it. Like, let me do my job. Go full Sonny Weaver on him and tell him, like, I'm
Mm.
working here. Like, let him do
Yeah.
his job. In the last 2 years before this one, the first selection was on an offensive skill player. I
Right.
think the one before that, Osiris Torrance was there too in one of the last 4 selections. So 3 of the last 4 in some capacity, the first picks, were on the offensive side to try and shore that up. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's drafted and developed the offensive line. He's gotten them extended. The offensive line is returning all 6, not just 5, including Alec coming in as the
Yeah.
6th offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he's doing a great job. And I don't, but to say that I'm in the middle is because I don't think Bean is straight up saying, we have enough. We're not looking for more at wide receiver. I just don't think the value lined up with the way that the board was falling and where they saw talented players still available. Like, would you have rather have reached on a wide receiver or have taken Dorian Strong, who fell to them into the 6, who everyone thought was going to go like a top 50 player? the value was just there on some of these guys. Deion Walker, again, considered by a lot of people to be top 50, sliding past that because of the back injuries. And again, we're going to get into all these guys more in depth, but the value was just there at other positions that needed to be addressed, and to build up some size and some mass and some strength on the defensive side of the ball. And I loved his draft. It's an A for me. I'm not at all upset that there wasn't a, top 50, top 75 wide receivers selected to this team. Sure, I think that's still an area that can be addressed, maybe via trade. Maybe we roll this unit this year, and next year wide receiver becomes more of an opportunity to look at if Keon doesn't take the steps that we're hoping for. There's plenty to see here, but it's not just wide receiver or bust. It's not a fantasy football draft.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this was a great draft for the fits, for the traits that they went after, in the positions that they attacked heavily.
Yeah, great points. I'm completely in agreement with you. And I want to say this. I am not anti-wide receiver. Neither of us are. Brandon Beane is not anti-wide receiver. No one in the building is anti-wide receiver. And no one in the building thinks that it is a bad idea to have more hands in the receiving core, higher talent, the ability to stretch the field. And no one in the building is sabotaging Josh Allen. No one in the building is bending the knee to a defensive coach because the defensive coach would love for his team to score points. None of that exists. And those are some things that I have seen discussed that I think is just absolutely ridiculous when you look at the context of the season. And I'm level-headed, right? But I get really frustrated with this conversation because it turns a blind eye to how much effort the Bills have tried to put into this offense, building the roster, building the personnel. They drafted, again, as you alluded to, 2 years ago, Dalton Kincaid in the first round. Then they take an offensive lineman in the second round. The year prior, they take James Cook in the second round, but they took Kaiir Elam because they needed a corner in the first. The following year from the Kincaid draft, their first pick was Keon Coleman. They have made concerted efforts in every season, whether that is in the draft, whether that is in free agency, whether that is at trade deadline, whether that is a few years ago when they shipped off a first for Stephon Diggs, as was pointed out by Ron Beck in our comments section. They have made concerted efforts to help Josh Allen and get him receivers. I think the biggest problem with this entire conversation, I tweeted this and I stand on this take, and I think, to be honest with you, it can't be said any differently. We are conflating results with effort. We are giving our power to the idea that Brandon Beane is not trying hard enough to help Josh Allen in the offense, and that they are caving to defense, and that defense is the only thing that matters, and Josh will just make it work. That is not true. That is not the case. The Buffalo Bills are putting in plenty of effort. What you are upset at is the execution of this offense, the offensive personnel. You are upset, and rightfully so. I don't disagree with people that are underwhelmed by Dalton Kincaid, that are underwhelmed by Keon Coleman, that are, upset that the receiving core hasn't been this world-beating unit since Diggs left and they haven't had a 1,000-yard guy. But again, evaluating the wide receiver room in a vacuum isn't fair to what this offense is, which is an offense that basically blends every skill position into one to create a symbiotic being that can score 30 points a game, 8 games in a row, and be a top advanced metric offense and a top offense in the NFL that plays a sustainable style of football in the winter, in January, and so on and so forth. So what I implore people to consider is that while, yes, it is frustrating that the Bills don't have, 2,000, doesn't have a Bengals level receiving core, their offense functions as a top unit in a different way. There is no one right way to create an offense, but also it's not like they're not trying to attack it. And that's also when Brandon Beane went on WGR, not what he was saying when he said like all the things to the two hosts. He was just saying, I think it's a little silly that everyone clamors for receivers still when we don't think that was our biggest need, because it objectively was not the biggest need the Buffalo Bills had on their roster. John, in that AFC Championship game, they put up 29 points and lost the game. They were scoring at a high clip, draining time of possession, and they were doing that against every team. They ran on Baltimore, who had a great defense. They were running on Kansas City, who had a great defense. And guess what? They lost in the playoffs because their defense got outclassed both by personnel and by coaching from Kansas City, who's had their number. So what do you do in response? You address the glaring flaws that are on your team that are the most pressing, and you keep that in mind for every single round you draft. In round one, John, you and I have spoken about it a million times. What was the most pressing need? Either D-line or corner. Guess what they did? They took a corner because
what did we say? And what did we say like a month, 3 weeks before the draft? Yeah, the pipe dream of Kenneth Walker or Derek Harmon is terrific, but it really started to look like those guys weren't going to be there. And if they're not going to be there, there's a lot of corners, really talented corners that were going to be on the board. And they had their choice of basically 5 guys that they could have gone to. And this is the one that they hung their hat on because he had the highest grade at a direct position of need. I love everything that you're saying about it. The defense got no pressure on Mahomes.
No.
None. Greg Rousseau disappeared. Ed Oliver disappeared. Like they weren't getting any pressure in that game. And that's multiple years in a row where the defensive line has gone silent when it matters most. So is it the biggest need? Absolutely. Did they address it heavily? Absolutely. Do they also still probably need another top wide receiver? Yeah, absolutely. But you can't do everything. You can't do everything. We're not saying they don't. 100%. So you look at the board and you look at the value and you look at what's there, I think they crushed this draft. I think that they did a great job with it. An A+ would have been taking more of those assets to trade up for a real go-getter pass rusher like a Michael Williams type, in my opinion. That would have been my favorite move to see. But it takes 2 to tango. We don't know if they made the calls and got hung up on. We don't know what happened. So the next best thing is what they did. And they also got aggressive to go get the guys that they wanted on day 2 and day 3. And I
100%.
I can't fault Bean at all for that approach. And by the way, one last thing before we get off this topic. The last 2 offensive skill position players that they drafted, Dalton Kincaid and Keon Coleman, were both hurt last year.
So we
don't even know their full ceiling in this offense. And I'm not saying that before Dalton Kincaid's injury, he was a world-beating tight end or anything along those lines. But Keon Coleman was showing some flashes. He had like back-to-back great weeks before the wrist injury. Dalton Kincaid, year 2, still developing in a crowded tight end room. Maybe the second half of the season, we saw him start to take more of those steps as the real, zone beater tight end that's capable of being a go-to option for Josh. We don't know. There were injuries that may have slowed down the progression of both of these guys.
I have to follow that by saying what happened to the offense when both of them got hurt. They still put up 30 points a game.
Yeah.
They were still productive. So that's what I don't understand with this conversation. Again, it's okay to have the weapons in the room. We are not saying we wouldn't be ecstatic if the Buffalo Bills somehow got their hands on Justin Jefferson tomorroh. We would be over the moon. But that's
remember that rumor?
I do remember that rumor, actually. It's crazy. That's such a poll. But that's not the priority for this team when you're talking about draft. And I will say this, and I'll get off the topic, because, again, I agree, John, with everything you're saying. And this offense can function in a myriad of ways. You can build it in a myriad of ways. But they're also going to be making a critical mistake if they neglect a position of need for something that might be a need, but also isn't nearly as pressing. Like, you cannot simply, in my eyes, just take the receiver, the shiny toy, and just ignore your corner room, ignore your secondary, ignore your D-line just because Matthew Golden fell instead of let's say it was Matthew Golden at 30 instead of Max Hairston. You know what they would have done? They probably would have gotten off of it, accrued capital, and went for the corner. And what bothers me is, again, like, think of it this way. When you look at your house and you have 3 holes in your wall and you have a large hole and a tiny hole, what are you fixing first? And what are you putting more effort into? And what's going to be overall better for the structure? You're attacking the larger hole. If you fill the small hole and neglect the large hole, the hole gets bigger and your wall crumbles. I don't want to live in that world, John. I have no interest. And for the Bills, this was a defensive-heavy draft. It was telegraphed from the get-go, and it made fundamental sense to hammer defense early, often, and enrich it with depth. And that's exactly what this draft was. And in my eyes, from the simple approach, because, again, I don't like grades as much, and my grades on this draft are independent of the wide receiver conversation. I am a fan of how Brandon Beane approached it, the depth, the positions of need, how he addressed it. And I think that we should be pleased that he did this, because it's an urgent draft for them, and they expressed urgency by taking these positions. So the wide receiver talk, we're going to put it away. I understand people want shiny toys and fun receivers at skill positions and all that stuff, but it's not the priority. Getting an ancillary piece for the offense is cool, but if you're going to go for it and ignore what else is out there that could be better for your depth on defense, which is what you needed, it's a mistake, and I'm glad they didn't make the mistake. Now, John, I'm sorry, if Torrey Horton fell to them at the position where they took Hancock, like, yeah, would have been fine with it. If they took Jalen Royals in, like, let's say they kept 132 and took Royals, would have been fine with it. But they didn't. They chose defense. They got poached. The board didn't fall their way. I'm glad this was their pivot. I'm happy with this draft. Just spoilers. So, John and Roy, thank you for pitching that again. You got us going. He said, damn, never thought a simple question would strike so many nerves. It's all I'm reading about and hearing about for the past couple days on the godforsaken app. And it's just like, why are we even having this conversation again of this year of all years? Like last year, and Bean said this verbatim, I would have understood. Dude, what does this year, especially when you look at what the defense looked like, how do you get this conversation from that? It just blows my mind. But I guess it's just something people always want. And I can't yuck your yum if that's how you want to be about it. If that's how you approach it, that's fine. I can't tell you anything. I'm just giving you my opinion, and I think the conversation's dumb. So, John, I feel like we just had a nice venting session. Let's shift the vibes. Let's get some positivity here. And let's talk about this draft class. Again, 9 overall picks, and just going in order. Max Hairston in the first round, TJ Sanders round 2, Landon Jackson round 3, Deion Walker round 4, Jordan Hancock, Jackson Halls. I think I might have had this wrong. Either way, day 3 picks. Jordan Hancock, Jackson Halls, Dorian Strong, Chase Lunt, and Caden Prather. And when I look at this again, come on, guys, don't do this now. I felt like we had such a serious start to the show, and then we got this, and this is a good comment, Dink and Dunk. Thank you for that. I giggled internally. Anyways, John, again, what we just talked about, they attacked defense. It was telegraphed from the start, and here you are. Yep. They have numerous additions to the defensive line. They have numerous additions to the secondary. They have secondary depth, and then they have an awesome blocking tight end in Jackson Hall. So I want to go about this with each player, time dependent. You know, we can talk about it as long or as little as we want to. I do want to get to everybody if we can, but let's start with Max Hairston. I'm going to call him Max, not Maxwell, because he prefers Max. Again, from Kentucky, rangy, really stout zone corner with freakish speed. I think he was the fastest time corner in the draft, if not one of the fastest time corners.
He was the fastest player.
Fastest player. Okay, so excuse me, fastest player in the draft at the combine. So the vision I see for Max Hairston is similar to the vision that they had for Rasul Douglas, only younger, faster, and more athletic. But what I really like about Hairston are, again, the frame is light, and I have my concerns about him when it comes to the down and dirty work, the run defense, the physicality. But from a pure coverage standpoint, he's an awesome prospect. I think when you talk about how the Bills like to mix and match and disguise and bait you into mistakes and trying to get you to just throw to a position where they have someone in range, he's perfect for that, but also perfect to generate turnover opportunity, which is something that this defense lives, I don't want to say and dies by, but they thrive off of it. They love generating turnovers. They love creating havoc. This is a corner that feels like he has ways to go in his development, but if you get there, he's exciting. John, Mad Max, your analysis. Tell me what you like, what you dislike, and how he fits.
Unbelievably high ceiling. One of the most athletic players, period, in this year's NFL draft. He is a blur on defense. When he puts his foot in the ground, like out of his back pedal, when he bursts forward, the dude is shot out of a cannon. And one of the things that I love the most about him is that quarterbacks are going to have to be very, very careful and very, very aware of where Mad Max is on the field at all times. Because if they throw his direction, his closing speed to jump routes, to peel off maybe what he was previously assigned to get to an area where other corners simply can't get to on the field, he has that ability to just be a nightmare for opposing quarterbacks. Yes, he's a little bit slighter, and as being said, that's the only reason he was available at pick 30 and wasn't a top 10 to 15 type guy, because he is so explosive and so fast and so charismatic, and the personality and everything that he does just fits with what this defense has been sorely missing. Mm-hmm. You might say that this is a direct response to Xavier Worthy. of needing a corner that can hang with blazing speed in the AFC playoffs. And he can. And he has
Hmm.
that speed and that ability. And he has such lethal ability to recover that even if he does miss a step or if he does get slightly bumped off a route because he is a little bit smaller, the closing speed, the recovery speed to get
Yep.
right back in phase is crazy high. So
Hmm.
yes, I think the size concern is the only reason why he was available at 30. He's coming off a year that had a little bit of a shoulder ding to him, but you're
Yep.
talking about a top 5% athlete at the cornerback position. Um, Someone that can contribute in a variety of ways. And when he was asked, all he kept saying after getting selected was, I can't wait to get the ball back to Josh. Like that's his whole vision. And that's the whole vision for this defense. Get the ball back, make a play, be a disruptor, create stuff. Yeah, there are some things that need to be coached. His tackling needs to be coached. Some of his pursuit angles need to be coached. But if you can get him to adjust those pursuit angles a little bit with his speed, I feel like that's a pretty shallow learning curve for him. I feel like
Hmm.
that's something that can be smoothed out in a hurry. And no, he's never going to be an elite tackling corner. That's not
Yeah.
his strength. But his ability in coverage, his ability in man is really, really good too, especially
Hmm.
off man. If you give him that ability off man to read what the wide receiver is doing in front of him and then clamp down on it, he's great at that. So
Yeah.
I love the pick. He wasn't my favorite option there going into the draft, but the more I've gone back and looked at him, the more I understand what the vision is. I will say I had nerves about it right after the pick. I'm like, man, if Benjamin Morrison, Trey Amos, Siobhan Revel, if those guys hit and Hairston doesn't, it's just a whole other conversation like the one that we just got off of a first
Right.
round corner. But I'm not going to kind of entertain that and go down that rabbit hole yet. Let's give the kid an actual true run at things. With Douglas back and the way that he plays and the instincts there, it's a perfect mentor for 1 year to get Hairston up to speed at the NFL level. But man, that blazing speed, that is
Yeah.
rare
You
stuff.
can't cover
And
it.
and it is super fun. And this defense has not had anyone with that speed in my memory. It is a
No.
blur.
The speed is the big thing for me because I feel like yeah, the run defense is the one I'm going to say. When you watch all of his reps, at least a good brunt of the run support reps he had, and I could shout out Anthony for posting this cut up. I think he posted it. I remember seeing it. But it's not like he loses every rep either, too. I think the problem
Mhm.
with him is pursuit angles need work, as pointed out by Eric, but also sometimes there's like a weird thing where it almost feels like he freezes because he felt like he took the wrong angle and he doesn't end up getting back into a position where he can make a clean tackle. So he tries to arm tackle and he gets blown by. And then there's times where his speed is just like so quick that he almost over pursues. And then
Mhm.
that's where the angle gets bad, or he just straight up misses. And that's going to happen with someone like him, right? Like you have speed, you want to use it, but ultimately, like when you're a havoc creator, that too ends up being the other side of the coin where you over pursue and create opportunity for an offense. And you don't want that to happen. So I hope that component of his game can clean up. But when it comes to the actual coverage ability, I think the sky's the limit for him. And again, it's the speed, not just for man coverage, where if he's on the line and he can not get beat up in press, able to hold his own ground and stay attached to a receiver's hip, he's going to keep up with that. But like you pointed out, and I love this because this is my favorite point about the speed, is when he loses, he could still win. Like he's never out of a rep. If he gets, let's just say, blown by or someone presses him and knocks him off base and he's off a stem, he can recover and get back into position. And he has the range and the length to not only use his speed, but to get up and get in position where he doesn't have to be right on top of you to kind of deflect a pass. And I called this out on the day 3 show, but that rep he had against Isaiah Bond was probably Brandon Beane's direct vision of how he's going to cover someone like Xavier Worthy or one of these speedy receivers where, yeah, you're fast, but I'm also fast and I can get into good position and coverage to just deflect. I think that is a huge boost for this Bills defense. I want to see what he does with more man coverage snaps, because that is a big thing. And in the times he did it, it was still fine. But when you want the uptick that the Bills probably want, you want to see it a more consistent basis. And with that, I do have worries about, again, physical receivers. When he's playing, if he plays any press jam, Is it going to be a problem? Is he going to be able to win? Is he going to get knocked off of route stems? But even if he does, how do you get back in position with a 4-2 corner? And that's really exciting to see from him. I think, again, sky's the limit as far as coverage goes. And even if the run defense isn't the cleanest, if it's good enough, it's kind of my argument with like Dalton Kincaid, which I don't think it's at that level yet, but just be solid, be okay. And if you can do that, we can make it work because the coverage is going to matter more at the end of the day, especially if the vision of this draft with the defensive line improvements keeps the linebackers clean to a point where the corner defending the run isn't a detriment. I mean, it's going to matter at some point, but it's not like they're going to constantly go after you. Just avoid being bullied, avoid being a target or an easy target, and I think we'll be in good shape. And I like the pick. Again, wasn't my preference. I was about it when they did it. The fit, I see the vision. Those deficiencies worried me. I felt like when you were talking about more sure things for the Bills defense, and we talked about it, Trey Amos was my preferred guy. But also, a lot of people value Trey Amos very differently than the league did. People had Trey Amos going, first round, sometimes even mocked to Green Bay. He ends up going to Washington in the 40s, which was kind of crazy. So yeah. It is what it is. They had a very high grade. Brandon Beane sees the vision with the traits. I trust that. And I think there is a floor with Max Hairston, and just be decent this year to good. And we got something there. So I like the pick. I wasn't in love with it, but I see the vision. I like the player. I think the profile is there. I think in this defense, especially again, with how he could play off, how he could catch up to you, all those things are going to be benefits for the Bills secondary, and they needed the depth and they got it. So anything else on Max Hairston, John, before we pivot to our next player?
Yeah, doesn't he just kind of embody the Bills' defensive philosophy as a whole? He's not going to be perfect, but God, is he opportunistic and fast. And I think that's really exciting stuff. I think that he just fits what it was that they were looking for. They met with him at the combine. They brought him in on a 30. They did a lot of work on him, and they feel very comfortable with what he can do. And I think the sky's the limit. I know we said that a few times, but I just think that his upside is huge.
100%. Yeah, there's a lot to like about the player, just the player, himself and what he can bring. And I'll never say no to anyone, especially in the secondary, that has reach, has speed, has, top tier athleticism. And if the frame can develop over time, then good, but there's a lot to work with. And he doesn't feel like as much of a project as like Elam was when he came into the league. If you want to say there's still going to be a developmental curve, of course, but it's not like you're plucking him out of something that he was doing and putting him into something brand new. Like, the Bills are still going to play zone a majority of the time, at least in my opinion. And to come from an 85% zone defense, that's still going to be like a better transition than, hey, I was in mostly man and I was playing press man. Now I'm having to learn zone and zone discipline and zone eyes. All that stuff is something you have to learn. And it felt like it just didn't happen the way they envisioned. But this feels like a different type of curve that I think, just given what they do, feels a little more realistic. So I buy into it. I like the pick, not in love, but I can absolutely see it. Now we move on to their next pick, and they traded up for this pick. And I was so shocked because when I saw they traded up, I was pretty convinced it was edge rusher. It was D-line, and it was a DT, which I wanted, but it was one I didn't expect. And it's TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. Now, I know TJ Sanders fits that typical Bills one-tech role, even though his weight, I think if you look it up, is 297 or 296. He can play in the 300s. He said it himself. So if you factor in that playing weight, the 300s with his height, it is a Bills one-tech profile. But even then, I was buying into frame a bit too much, and I was pro Alfred Collins in that spot. So I was kind of disappointed. I calmed down, and anyone in the Discord knows I went in like, what the F are we doing? And then I eventually was like, no, it was the old me. Sorry. I buy into it a lot more a couple days later because of just how disruptive this player is, how chaotic he is. When you talk about havoc, he brings havoc. He is a disruptor, whether it's at 3 or whether it is at 1. I think there's alignment versatility with him. I think there's unrelenting motor, and all of that is something that they want in this D-line, especially, and I feel a little better about it too because of who we'll get to when we talk about D-line, multiple people. So from that, I'm pretty happy with this pick now. I've come around on it. I'm enjoying what I think will be the plan for him. John, your thoughts, TJ Sanders?
Yeah, how the class ended up made me feel way better about this pick later. But I liked it when it happened too. Say it with me. Top 30 visit, Senior Bowl, RAS over 9. That is the trifecta for Brandon Beane in terms of what he loves. And you're talking about a very disruptive alignment versatile defensive tackle. Like you said, if this defense wants to roll out some NASCAR packages in 3rd and long, put him and Ed on the field at the same time. Oh God. Yeah.
Mhm.
Love that. Like he has so much juice and just pure straight line athleticism to run through a dude with some pass rush moves that show some finesse and some explosiveness. I think there's a lot to like about TJ Sanders. I think he's probably going to play in that 290 to 300 range, maybe like might just tip the scale at 300. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in that 290 to 300 range is probably going to be his sweet spot. And he has some real ability to swipe the hands away, to use his hands well, to dip under, to keep his balance as he's pursuing. Like there's a lot of things there. And I know that there's multiple people out there that had him as like their defensive tackle 2 or 3 in this class. I think again, this is a direct, okay, cool. We're going after the defensive line. We've identified that we want to get faster and more athletic and stronger on the interior, and we're going to go do that. That's our dude. That's the fit that we want. That's the the type that we're going after. They identified their guy, they traded up and they went and they got him.
Yeah, and I think TJ Sanders, again, this doesn't deconfirm the Bills, because the Bills eventually got a profile that you could consider a more conventional one tech. Granted, he's also an athletic freak, so maybe not conventional, but at least kind of what the people wanted in size, and we'll get to him again. But with TJ Sanders, he fits more of the consistent mold that the Bills have done, and this is simply what they value. And it's really hard to disprove that claim now or think that they're going in a totally different direction when they take someone like him. Because, yeah, when you look at the frame and you look at what he played at, and when you look at, even though he had one tech alignment at South Carolina, you would think in the NFL, he's just more of a 3 tech. And I would be inclined to agree with you, but they're definitely going to play him at 1 at times. I don't know if he's going to be considered an every down 1. What I think the likeliest outcome is there will be 1 tech snaps for him, but he's also going to have opportunities to rotate in with Ed as a 3. And then you have an unrelenting duo of Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders and no breaks, or even having both of them on the field. And even though you could argue there's redundancy there, to go from Ed Oliver, the 6'1", 300 something pound DT, to now TJ Sanders, who is taller and plays at a similar weight, but also has the pass rush juice, also has the power to get under your pads and move you. That should be a fun thought for Bills fans, and it's a fun thought for me. But again, it doesn't mean he's boxed into exclusively 3T. Now, I would have, again, been more comfortable, and this is where my concern lies with TJ Sanders, with a more true body, because I have bought into the philosophy of your 1 tech, if it's a true fatty, a large 1 tech, what I think the benefit is, like a Tyreek Williams, which, by the way, it seems very evident at this point that they wanted Williams and Williams got poached, right?
Yeah.
That Williams got taken by Detroit. So he kind of said himself, I think Buffalo was going to take me. Don't know for sure, but they probably did want to go get that kind of player. So I haven't ruled out entirely that they do favor getting that if it's just based on their board value. But with him gone and you pivot to Sanders, I would have preferred to have that frame, because I felt like even if this guy is just a 2-down run stuffer, that to me has impact for the Bills' offensive philosophy. Because now if we are not compromising ourselves in run defense consistently, explosive plays don't exist as often as they used to, and we are putting you in a longer 3rd down, that's a win, because now we're giving ourselves the chance to come off the field. Less time is off the clock, more time to possess the ball. But there are other right ways to do that. And one of those right ways is havoc plays, negative plays for an offense, getting into the backfield, disrupting, penetrating on the line, and being able to give opportunities where you press an offense into a mistake, even if it runs some clock. So it's not my ideal way. I just need to see TJ Sanders have the run defense discipline, not get blown off blocks, be able to handle double teams. I think the thing for the Bills, and they've said it themselves, and we talked about this with Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard and everyone, your frame is your frame, but if you're playing above it on tape, we're willing to take the flyer on you, and Sanders does. He does. There are several reps where he is able to maintain his anchor and run defense, shed blocks violently, get through holds. A clip that I posted for Eric and Ant the other day on their film room account, which you should check out. Sanders is literally getting held and just blows by it. He's the type of player that plays with that much power and strength. So, yeah, the frame does worry me. I have questions about it, but also if he's playing above it, I don't care. Then he's a good player, and good players make plays. I see the potential for him to do that. Trading up I didn't expect it, But, in context of what the Bills defensive line wants and what they are, I think it made sense and I'm okay with it. Not my preferred. I'm not mad. Fine by it. John, any more thoughts on Sanders?
Yeah, a couple things. I love what you said about redundancy because there is no such thing on the defensive line. Go ahead and ask Philly if they have too many defensive linemen.
Yeah.
No such thing. They will tell you we can always use more. I love his ability to line up all over the place, like you said, because you can plug him in at the one tech. You can bring him in for spelling ed to give him a breather and
Mhm.
rotate. There's all kinds of ways that you can use this dude, and he is really, really explosive. I
Yep.
agree with you in terms of what you're saying about the true 330-pound, two down run stuffer, double team eater, nose tackle. I do think that that's something that they probably wanted as well, and it just wasn't there. It didn't shake out. But there's multiple ways to play defensive line. Now, what you can't have if you're not going to take a big run stuffing, double team eating, one tech nose tackle, what you can't have is someone in that place that doesn't create havoc. It's got to be one or the two. You need someone that's either going to free up everybody else, like a Jamari Caldwell or Alfred Collins type in this draft
Yeah.
class, where they're just going to eat up double teams, anchor down, and free up Ed and the linebackers and all that to go clean up. Or if you don't have that, you need someone with as much juice and athleticism and production as what we saw here in this pick. You're talking about a guy with a 12.6% pass rush win rate from a defensive tackle,
Yeah.
not an edge. That is an elite number from a defensive tackle, like one of the top in this class. So this
Mhm.
is someone that is a havoc maker. This is more of a Derek Harmon. Like Derek Harmon isn't that anchor down nose tackle type either. This is someone that
Yeah.
you were looking at him with a similar frame to say, oh yeah, we can play him at one tech because he's also going to offer XYZ and go get after the
Mhm.
quarterback. That's the same thing here. This is your bargain on Derek Harmon type of defensive tackle. So I see it absolutely, and I see his ability to line up all over the place and blow through offensive linemen with his speed and with his strength. I it was an unexpected pick. I agree. I feel the same way, but I again I see the vision for what they're looking for on this defense, which is we want athletes. We want
Mhm.
dudes that are fast, that can create havoc, whether that was Max Hairston in the secondary, whether that's on the defensive line. We want dudes that are just going to mess blank up.
Yeah.
Like we just want
Yeah.
them to go get after it. And that is what TJ Sanders can do.
Yeah. And, again, Eric and Ann on their show made a point that it resonates with me because it's hilarious, but it's also true. And they just have a D line that's composed of pains in the asses. Like I'm paraphrasing, it's not the
Yep.
exact quote, but that's what it is. And Sanders, we talked about Derek Harmon, and Derek Harmon was a fun prospect and someone I would have been hyped for them to take. He goes to Pittsburgh at 21. Derek Harmon doesn't play at all that different of a frame. I mean, if you think Sanders
Mhm.
plays at 295, then so be it. Maybe he does. But if Sanders does play to the 310 like he explained or as said he could, then that's a pretty similar build to Harmon. And we had all those similar visions. Numbers can be very deceiving, and sometimes we buy a lot into the arbitrary numbers like weight. But if we're talking he plays at 305 like Harmon did, then you have a very similar profile of player as far as frame goes. And then I think a similar player as far as what they do and how they disrupt and the type of power they play with. Like Sanders, there's a vision there again that I see that I really like. I just need to see it. And I could say that for every prospect, but especially with him because I feel like they took a really big flyer. They
Mhm.
expressed a very large desire to trade up and go get this player. They love the player. So that's showing us that Bean is bought all the way in, and we need to see why.
Yep.
So that has to pay off for them. And I do think because of the trade, it does add some pressure to the player. You want to see it pay off quickly, but I think it can. I think it can. I'm not against the player. I was hoping for, again, a more conventional size, but this is a guy that has all the tools to be a really great success in the NFL, and that could pay off for this Bills D line. So let's keep on the theme of D line, John. And before we do, everybody, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate all of you. If you've tuned in late, welcome. Always happy to have you here listening to us after the fact. appreciate the hell out of you for checking us out on our audio platforms. If you would be as kind as to drop a like, share it with your Bills fan friends, and let them know about Cover One and this show, that would be greatly appreciated. Get our faces to their faces just through a screen. Let them see beautiful John Helmkamp on their screen as well. It's a good time to be a member of our One Pass community. And if you're interested, the description has the link to sign up for $60 a year. You have the opportunity to become an exclusive premium insider. It is a great time. It is awesome to be a member of such an awesome community. So if you are interested, check it out. I cannot express enough how good of an opportunity it is. If you love the Bills, if you love talking about football, if you love talking to people, that's a great thing to do. So check it out. Now, we move on. We keep the spirit of D-line alive by talking about the Bills' third-round pick. A surprise for the fact that this player fell to the third round, in my opinion. Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. Now, this was a player that almost felt like a layup when you talk about, oh, he's on the board. They're fucking taking Landon Jackson. Like, I honestly, at first, I thought that's who they were taking at 41. And I was like, ooh, a trade up. I don't know if I like a trade up for him. But I was okay with it if they stood pat in the second round. He fell to like 62 and they did it, which Brandon Beane said they would have done, right? They end up staying put. They get the third rounder back in the trade, which was great, by the way. I like that they got that in the trade from Chicago. And then they managed to have Landon Jackson fall to them. And there are, again, questions about Landon Jackson's development as a pass rusher. What's the ceiling for him? But I feel like this is a player that, I'm going to be honest with you, of the first three picks, I see the highest amount of potential for. I see the, I guess, clearest path for potential to pay off with this player. Freakish athletic profile, freakish length, freakish size. Plays, I think, at around 250. If I have it right, I might.
No. Landon Jackson's like a 285-pound dude.
Oh, he's 85. Okay, so I undersold the shit out of that. My apologies.
He's a big dude,
large human,
with 33 and a quarter arms. He has offensive tackle arm length.
Yeah, so I undersold his weight. My apologies. But regardless, I mean, there's just a lot to like about the prospect when you talk about him as a pass rusher, when you talk about, again, using those traits to be able. Go. I'll give you this one.
No, you were closer the first time. It's 265. My eyes deceived me, and I turned the 6 into an 8. So
okay, what I say 250?
Yeah, so we'll split the difference.
Okay. All right.
Basically.
All right. I'll live with that. Yeah, I can live with that. It's okay.
Large human.
It would have been funny if it was just like, it's actually 302. Oops.
He's 330. What do you know?
Oh, wow. I was way off. Speaking of 330, we'll get there. But yeah, Landon Jackson has a lot to like as far as a prospect goes for an edge rusher. He fits the Bills mold because, again, when you talk about the traits, the length he can play with for run defense purposes, that's very useful. Like, again, just being able to seal the edge and, when it comes to shedding blocks, being able to use the reach to get people off of him and also use the other arm to kind of disrupt and slow things down, which is what you want. This feels to me, if they do decide to move on from AJ Epineza, I am not going to say they are going to because that's definitive. But if they do decide to move on from AJ because he only has one more year left, this is the sole successor, but with upside that I think you could maybe see what you saw from Epineza the past 2 seasons, like immediately. That's how high I am on him. Again, we have to see it pay off. It is still something of a project. I wouldn't call it nearly as big of a project as some of their picks in years past or upcoming. But a player that they really got sold on the traits and want to mold into a stout edge rusher and run defender. John, what do you think about him?
There was conversation about him at 30. That's how much talk there was from people that cover the Bills, over the last couple months. It just felt like he was going to be a Buffalo Bill. They brought him in on the visit. He just fits the type. I love your AJ Epineza point because he's basically that type of player. He's got the motor, he has the pass rush ability, and he's got that length. But I think that he has a little bit of a higher ceiling almost than Epineza, which is kind of crazy to say. I think that at 30, I would have been like, "Ooh, boy, that's a reach." In the second, if at 52 or 56, I can't remember, I would have been like, "Okay, I think that he's probably in play there." So to get him at 72 was a really big value. I think that this is a really high upside defensive end with pass rush ability, with bend, with strength. Like, he's a mauler on the edge. And like you said, that length for the run defense is huge. I mean, you'd be able to put him out there and have that arm to be able to get around the outside to set the edge, to not allow running backs to get out around the corner. He does a lot of things very, very well, grades very, very highly in his
Mhm.
run defense. It shows up on tape. And not only that, but the dude bullied uh um oh my god. Fourth overall pick,
Booker?
offensive tackle. No,
Oh,
offensive tackle
Campbell.
for the
Campbell.
Patriots. Bill Campbell. I was thinking other Will names. I couldn't pull Campbell to save my life.
Did he have
He
reps
bull
against Booker? I thought he did play Booker too, and I thought he
he
had
did.
pauses. Was that at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah. Yeah, he
Okay.
did well against Booker at the Senior Bowl. He bullied Will Campbell in their game against LSU, and now you're going to have them going toe to toe in the AFC East potentially
Mhm.
for like 8 years. It's going to be great. Like I love that. But Landon Jackson, I love that pick, especially at that range. Like I thought for sure he was high on the radar in the second round for the Bills, and to get him there at the third, that just had to feel like a gift. Like that just had to
Mhm.
be like, oh
Yeah.
wow, Landon Jackson's still on the board. Call that one in. Like we're taking him. So love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And this is where the vision started to come together. You're 3 picks in, you're like, okay, we got a absolute burner of a corner,
Mhm.
with 4.2 speed, super athletic, position flexibility, 3 tech, 1 tech, sort of defensive tackle and TJ Sanders, big, strong, long, athletic Landon Jackson to go on the edge. Now you're like, okay, this defense is starting to take some shape. Like you're restocking the cupboards here with guys that all have very high upside, that
Right.
all can be instant contributors in some
Mhm.
capacity. Give me Joey Bosa mentoring
Yeah.
Landon Jackson for a year, dude. God, that is just fun.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's the thing I keep forgetting about that like I'll randomly remember and I'm like, "Oh my god. Holy crap." Like that
Joey Bosa's
was
there. Yeah.
Joey Bosa signing in a vacuum. I was like, "Cool. Like I really like this. It makes sense. They have the need. I hope he could stay healthy." Now I feel a lot better because I feel like they have the buffer. And when Hoyt got suspended, I was like, "Shit, what are they going to do? What are they going to end up being like? And then what are they going to end up kind of going for in the room? How do they address it? Do they end up with a random late round D lineman? Do they end up going for an early round edge rusher? What I think they ended up doing was they complemented that large frame and stout pass rush with a developmental guy that does have, in my opinion, the highest trajectory of these picks. And I think they're going to put him in a really good spot where it's just rotation, rotation, rotation in a crowded room. But that gives you the opportunity to get him reps without putting too much on his plate early. And I think with Landon Jackson, the vision is there for a player that is going to be just insanely disruptive. Again, what he doesn't have in like the finesse, the bend, what he doesn't have in like really the refinement game, he has in just pursuit and effort, and it never goes away. He never wavers. He's a player that's going to continue to try and use power, to try and use his arms. There's never quit in any rep, where if he gets bested, he tries to best you back and he tries to use his arms effectively. Again, we could talk about the chop move that he has. We could talk about how he stabs. We could talk about the power that, while is not consistent, I think he could continue to develop and play with and eventually refine in a wide edge role. And, it was mentioned, I think TP mentioned it in our chat, but talking about the fact that he played exclusively or almost exclusively for I at Arkansas, now giving him the opportunity to move into different alignments more frequently and to give him the opportunity to move out wide a bit more frequently and just put him in more positions where, despite the box he was put in at Arkansas, the ability to have alignment versatility, I think there's a lot to be excited about with Landon Jackson, because what I think is kind of similar to the argument you had about like Texas A&M D linemen and like that scheme kind of holding them back to what we could feel they'd be in the pros, and that's what people bought in on. I feel similarly with Landon Jackson, although again, I'm not saying he's the same player as those guys. But again, if you want to say that 4i limited him and maybe there's more to his game and more potential for him as a pro in a Bill scheme that's going to move you around and mix up fronts and give you opportunities to succeed, maybe put him in as a de facto 1 or 3. That's fun. I really like the idea of him in this defense long term. I think in his rookie year, we're playing with a really fun rotation of edge rushers and edge setters with Bosa. And also, the thing too, I was very concerned about Bosa's snap count because of injury history with run defense snaps. And I'm not saying Bosa's going to get none. He's going to get his. He's a good run defender. Now you don't have to give him as many, in run defense. I think now what you allowed yourself to do is, even with the Hoyt 6-game suspension, you also now give Landon Jackson an opportunity to fortify himself as a run defender, as an edge setter, and see how good he is from the jump. And if he's really good, you might not even have to have Joey Bosa have many run defense snaps at all. Like if you're playing with the luxury of this guy is just a stalwart run defender and he's just ready to roll, then imagine Landon Jackson getting his hands dirty and paying his dues as a run defender, getting his pass rush snaps, and then Joey Bosa's just like a pass rush specialist. Like, could you imagine that dynamic and how fun that would be? I love the thought of it, and I hope that can be that way. More realistically, I think there's going to be a split, but for Jackson, the profile, the measurables, the power, all of these traits are there, and I'm really pumped to see what this player looks like. I loved the pick. Literally, when they announced it on the TV, and they're like, third round pick, I'm like, it's Landon Jackson. Like, who the hell else could it be at this spot? There's no one else that made sense besides him to the degree that he makes sense. Like, I love the player. I love the prospect. I was all in on him from the jump when I first learned about him and watched a bit more of him. I thought there were spots that would have been rich to take him, but I think where they got him is insane value. And I think there's a return on investment pending, and I like it. So,
Senior Bowl, top 30 visit, over a 9 RAS. It's the trifecta. It's the Brandon Bean special, man. I'm telling you. I think that this defense with what they did, and there's still another guy that we're going to talk about to add into this conversation. You start thinking about some ways that they might be able to do a little bit of like amoeba defensive front. Like you have so much versatility in terms of where these guys can line up. I mean, man, move them, have them standing up.
Move
them around. Put Landon Jackson right over the guard, put Sanders out at the 4-eye. Like you can just toy around with some stuff to confuse offensive linemen and disguise coverages and then stunt blitzes off of it. Like you can start getting really creative with some of the guys that you have in the room now. I think that you added a lot of versatility that this defensive line has kind of been lacking a little bit. And then, like you said, you have Joey Bosa in there for a year, maybe more, but at least for this year, as basically your straight up Von Miller replacement, in my opinion. It's just your kind of lower snap count veteran pass rusher, but he's way better against the run, obviously, than Von was. It gets really fun. Like the more you start thinking about it, you go, you don't have starters and reserves. You just have this stream of guys that you can mix and match depending upon the situation and the play style that you're trying to go against and the stunts that you want to run. And like, sure, you might have the same 4 guys that go out on the field for the first snap of the game, but the rest of the game, man, the defense, I mean, the creativity for Sean McDermott and the defensive coaching staff there, they've got to just be like, oh man, we have all these toys that we can play with all of a sudden. Let's get creative. Let's see what we can mix up.
Bill's defense doesn't want you to know what the hell they're going to do. And they especially don't want you to know what the hell they're going to do up front. And that's just a beautiful thing. And alignment versatility was the theme of this draft, really. Like pretty much every pick, with the exception of a few that are a little more boxed into their role, I could say have multiple hats they can wear on this offense or defense. And in the case of Landon Jackson, even TJ Sanders, even later on when we talk about Walker, or later on, it'll be next. That is, there's a lot of different things you can do with these players as far as alignment, as far as where you have them go, as far as the role you want them to have, the role you want them in every given play, and then interchange that with your linebackers too. And maybe if you try to go with some odd mirror or anything that you feel could be creatively put onto the field this year, it's an exciting prospect. And we talk about it every year, but the vision feels really realistic this year because of how they've composed the role. And I put this up because this is a comment I like from Nick. Shout out to Nick. Thank you for watching. I feel like taking Jackson softened the blow of not taking a big traditional 1T in the second round. And that's another thing. If they don't want to do it with the conventional frame or profile, they'll do it by their scheme. They'll figure out a way to make it work. And I don't feel like that's necessarily like them trying to like come back to the league trend or them trying to climb from a hole. Rather, they just prefer doing it a different way because they feel the way they want to do it has a very large upside as far as, again, turnover opportunity, negative plays, stuffs, things like that. Maybe they get gashed. They gash you right back. They treat defense like a boxing match. Like that's just how Sean McDermott's defense operates. And they are willing to live in that world. And taking a guy like Landon Jackson, who just, again, has these traits to be a really productive player on their line off the edge or wherever you align him, that kind of caters into that a little bit more. So I'm pumped about that pick. That just straight up, that's an A+ pick for me. I'm just very pleased with where they got him and what he could be for this defense. And, I see people say like, hey, like, they're not going to move on from AJ now. They could. The post June 1st thing where they save about $6 million is a real thing. I don't know if they'll move on from AJ right away unless the value is right. But if they don't, it's just another piece. But we also have to be mindful of how many spots they can have on the D line and so on and so forth. So love the Jackson pick. Now we should move on to the next pick, which is just an objectively hilarious pick. Like, just you either love the prospect or you hate the prospect. You either just think this guy is going to be a star or think this guy is going to be absolutely nothing in this league. And that's Deion Walker, who they traded back with Chicago to 109 to take, meaning Brandon Beane saw the player falling and reached from 132 to 109 to go get this player. So there is a little bit of pressure on the player only because of the value this GM had to move up and go get him. This player is a project. I am telling all of you that right now. Be ready. There are going to be ugly reps. The thing we should be looking for from Deion Walker is consistency in his play, is development in a positive direction, flashes of brilliance. That's all I'm asking for their fourth round, freakishly large defensive lineman. I'm calling him lineman, not tackle, even though he's aligned as DT. Deion Walker in 2023 was considered like a top 10 pick. In 2024, dropped to the fourth round, played through a back injury. So that was obviously going to be a major factor in many ways when you're talking about him being able to get low, him being able to bend and move, him being able to play with power. Like, that is a limiting injury. So it made the tape ugly. He wasn't going to not play because he had a draft coming up. He wanted to play and do his best. So I think that is something you have to keep in mind. But there are worries I have when it comes to, is he simply just too freaking big? Is the pad level going to consistently be a problem? Is he going to play too high and be too high the entire time? Or can we, when he's healthy, get him low enough to just generate power from the ground and use the 330 pounds of mass this man has to create push from the interior, maybe even out as an edge rusher? And all of a sudden, you got a fourth round tactician that's ginormous and creating insane amounts of opportunity for the defense. John, I see you smiling. I'm hyped about it if it works out. I'm so skeptical. Like, I don't want to get myself too excited, but there's a vision. I say that over and over, but I really see it with him. What do you got?
Like you said, this was a consensus first round pick after the 2023 season. He is a early declare still. This was his junior year this last year. So his sophomore year in the SEC, he was a freak of nature, and they lined him up everywhere from one tech to edge. He was everywhere on the Kentucky defensive line. He is 6'7.5", 331 pounds with over 34-inch arms and almost 11-inch hands. This is a large human being, and you got him in the fourth round. Yes, there are concerns about his pad level. He plays too high. There's no denying it. And that's why he's a fourth round pick instead of a first round pick. He plays too high, and when he does that, it really minimizes his power and his leverage and his ability to generate the disruptive force that he is capable of using. This is a project, but he is taken outside the top 100. And Brandon Beane talked about it a lot. They start watching film a year out. He was saying that this time last year, they were watching film on 2023 guys, and they were watching Deion Walker then. So they were very familiar with him for, over a year before this year's NFL draft, where they knew about him. They loved what they saw. They had a first round grade on him. They said he was a first round type player. I think I'm safe saying they had a first round grade. He said something along the lines of he was a first round type player, something along those lines. So anyways, that's how they viewed him. They viewed him as like a first round talent coming out of 2023. And then this last year had a fracture in his back, which makes a very big difference, obviously, with your flexibility and your ability to bend. So how much of it was the back injury? How much of it is just his, natural frame being super large, and he has a long torso, but he does have super long arms also. He's a Frankenstein to put on the defensive line. He is just a big, massive human being. And if they can coach that up, Deion Walker has unbelievable upside as a nightmare on the defensive line. We're talking about that position versatility. Every single defensive lineman that they drafted has lined up all over the place. Some more than others, but Deion Walker was beating tackles as a pass rusher at 6'7", 330 pounds as a sophomore. Like, this dude can do a little bit of everything. He's good against the run. He's good getting after the quarterback, and he is nightmarishly big. If he can just keep his leverage, and if they can
Yes.
coach that, my God, you are talking about someone that has unbelievable ceiling
Yes.
on the interior of the defensive line. So this is where you take the gamble. If they used
Mhm.
a second round pick on Deion Walker, I would have been like, oh God, no, don't like that, because you're expecting a second round pick to be an immediate contributor. Yeah, right there, that comment, all SEC 3 times is crazy. I mean, this is a very productive force of nature on the defensive line. And you're taking this gamble on a 4th round pick with massive upside. This is where you take the swing in the draft. I love it.
Yeah.
I love taking the swing here, because if it hits huge.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to get to too. I'm more forgiving of the project working, obviously, or failing because it's a fourth rounder. Now they did trade
Mhm.
up, but this is a fourth round project, and I see them really trying their damnedest hardest to be able to get this player to get to that spot where he's playing with better leverage and not standing up as frequently, playing with better starting position, playing with better technique. But the thing about Walker is, even if he doesn't all the time, I think he's just simply strong enough as a 330 pounder to have his wins. But I want him to refine it, because I do think that there are times where he doesn't look like he's 330 pounds on the field. There's times where he gets knocked off, he gets pushed back, and you're like, how? You know what I mean? With a frame like that, and it's a balance issue. And again, that
Yeah.
could be in part to not being able to anchor properly or have the discipline to maintain balance because you physically can't because of your back. So all that, it makes the evaluation of him so difficult that when you look at 2023, it's not because we're looking back to a time where it was sunshine and rainbows and this past year's film was just objectively bad and there was no factor. You're looking at it because you're seeing a healthy version of the player you just drafted, and that healthy version was dominant, absolutely dominant, which is why I buy into the idea that they have been watching him for a year, had a first round
Mhm.
grade, saw the opportunity and took it, and feel that what they just got was the sneaky best pick of the draft, and they're getting an all-world defensive lineman for a bargain. Now, that is the wishful thinking side, but I need to see those traits actually come to life, right? It's really fun and grand when you have a 6'7", 330-pound player. It's not fun when that player looks like he's me and getting destroyed by very large human beings on a field, because I couldn't handle a double team in the NFL, but I would hope that he could. So I need to see, again, the levels get lower, be able to just get into that better position, be able to almost look like he doesn't play high cut or doesn't look like he's going to get blown off from bad balance. Show us that you can get lower to the ground, stay healthy. And from there, what I think the Bills should be doing is just limit the role. You know, I'm not
Yep.
saying he can't expand as the season goes on, but make him win at a role in at a limited role to start and expand it slowly. If we can do this, and whether it's at one tech, whether it's at edge, whatever, then we have an opportunity to get a really great player. But also, and as it's pointed out by several members of the chat, the back injury, that's for someone his age, I worry about that. I worry about that recurring. I worry about if his health is just going to be long-term problems and we're never going to see the potential realized. But I am willing to see this through. I like the pick. There's a lot of risk to it, but it's a fourth rounder. If the gamble doesn't pay off on a fourth rounder, I don't think it's an abject failure, because I think everyone and their mother knew it's a risk.
It's a 4th round pick. 4th round picks, I mean, you're talking about low hit rates. You're looking for developmental traits. That's what you're looking for. As soon as day 3 starts, you're looking for developmental traits. And yes, some players have higher floors than others, but man, this is where you take the swing on the absolute monster athlete defensive lineman for sure. I mean, I would love, like you said, start him off in a limited role, coach him up. Maybe this is someone, if we do bring Daquan Jones back for a year, great. We're not asking much for him. If we don't, maybe you're asking a little bit more production out of him in year 1. But this is likely your, backup one tech is likely the role that I see him filling. Give him some limited reps to be able to get in there and muck things up and coach the hell out of leverage and power. Like, those are the 2 things to coach until you're blue in the face with him.
Right.
Is how do you maximize your natural, unbelievable traits that should have you poised to be one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Like, those are the traits that you have.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
So go
I think
get it.
that it's a project, but projects can work out. I mean, I even think with the Bills, when it comes to defensive line, they've missed, but they've also hit. And I think Greg Rousseau is a great example of someone with, again, freakishly tall, freakish traits, very little experience, a lot of question marks because of the limitations to his starting experience and what it could look like. And I think he's I don't call him elite, but I think he's a very good player in the NFL. And that's what I like about him. I think that what I like about Deion Walker is, I see a similar path of potential for him just because we've seen them be able to take freakish traits and make it work. It's not a guarantee. It's not a sure thing, but
No.
I can buy into the idea of why they picked him and really buy into the idea of if it works. Because if it works, holy crap, this is a crazy, versatile, but fun player. But I'm interested to see what the role is to start.
I am not saying this is likely. So please do not clip me and tell me that, oh, John said this. No, all of you looking right at you. No, stop it. But you're talking about like a 5% to 10% chance outcome that you just drafted your Chris Jones, like that you drafted your freak beast defensive tackle that other offensive coordinators have to scheme the crap out of. Like that is within, albeit limited, within the range of outcomes because of the traits that he has and the flashes that you saw, especially in 2023 as a sophomore out of him, are so high.
Yeah.
That
insane.
that is what the Bills are going, okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to get. That little glimpse, we're trying to get 90% of that 90% of the time.
That's kind of where I cling on to because the healthy tape was insane. Like it's not like we're talking about a player they took in the sixth, that we're just talking about measurables. And Nick says, John just said Deion Walker will be Chris Jones. Spin says, why is John saying Walker is Chris Jones? You can't do that here. These guys do this to me. Now they're doing it to you. This is the seeing the tape of the player, seeing the profile of the player, and then seeing the marriage of the two and knowing what he can be at full health. That's why you buy into this too. We're not talking about taking a 6'7", 330-pound guy in the seventh round and saying it's literally just size, but this guy hasn't ever had flashes. This guy has put on what would be considered first round top 10 performances. So that's where you could say there's hype for it. That's where I have hype for it, but I got to see it. And I got to know the back's healthy. I looked it up. He's reportedly fully cleared to, participate in camp. He's fully healthy. He made a full recovery. That was the verbiage used. I don't know the specifics of his injury and how that heals. So if it's pain management and tolerance, I'm not crazy about that, of course. If it is a full recovery and it was just a random injury that happened and it's not going to linger, then I think we can go ahead and get, more into this, but we'll have to see. And moving on to the next prospect, and this is one I don't have crazy feelings on as much as I feel like this is someone that you can never have too many of these types of players in your secondary for depth, and maybe an indicator of the future of guys like Cam Lewis, maybe Brandon Codrington, and that's Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State, the Swiss Army man of your secondary. He was drafted and taken as a DB and not as a corner or a safety, but he can play both, can play in the nickel, can play free safety, can play, in a pinch as a boundary corner. There's a alignment versatility again with this player coming from a championship defense, a player that I, enjoy being on the roster. I'll never say no to this, especially on day 3. What do you think about him, John?
What I'm trying not to do is just be the overly optimistic person. But again, there's so much to like. And you're talking about someone coming from a championship caliber defense that played all over the place, that has a knack for showing up when it matters. Like he makes big plays at big times. He is very good at stripping the ball, going after the ball, even after the catch, like forcing it to be an incompletion, even when he got beat to start with. I just think that there's a lot of traits, a lot of grittiness, a lot of compete in his game. That is probably what Brandon Beane saw and was like, that is awesome. Like, that's great. I think that there's things there that you see someone that has a role that can line up at safety, at nickel, at outside corner. And we're talking, again, more about versatility and compete. And I think that that's a really good thing. Oh, also, he's super athletic over in 9 RAS. Again, we'll just another green checkbox for Brandon Beane with the athlete that he is. 6 foot, 195, 4.45 40, 41.5 inch vert. almost 11 foot broad. So you're talking about someone that has athletic traits, position versatility, and that can go get the ball and make plays on the ball when it matters.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking for. It's not because I don't think the player is good. It's just given the room right now, I fully expect him to be. A lot of people have likened him to like the new Saran Neal, and I tend to agree. I think this is probably your starting backup nickel that has higher upside than someone like Cam Lewis that you've seen a lot of over the past few years. And I don't think Cam Lewis is a bad player, but I think Cam Lewis is probably someone they feel they can interchange with a younger player, not have to, extend, do anything with the contract work, let the player eventually go and go get someone from a very stout pro style defense who can now fill in if Taron Johnson goes down. And, the point I had made was I think life after Taron Johnson isn't immediate by any means, but I do think the conversation is going to start relatively soon, kind of like how it slowly built up for Matt Milano. I think for Taron Johnson, a couple seasons, and we're eventually going to be looking for a successor just because of the nature of his position, the physicality you have to play with, the hits you take, and some of the offensive direction of the league that might put you in more disadvantageous positions against the run that could lead to more injury as you get older. I like having Taron Johnson insurance. And if that's all he is to start, that's fine. Yep. That's something I am totally cool with. Again, it's not a knock on the player not being able to become a starter at all. But when you look at how the Bills are composed and constructed, the path for him is to take the starting nickel role, backup nickel role, unless they feel like maybe, they Daquan Hardy has that locked in, and they end up just feeling like this guy is someone that's just a utility man at all positions. So I don't really have much else to add on him. I like him, and I like the pick. There's no real reason to be mad at it. I do think it was a pivot from receiver. Like I said, I think Torrey Horton was still on the board at this point, and they wanted him. He went. Maybe it was Pooh Paul at this point, but it's fine. It's a fine pick. Like there's really nothing I feel like there's any downside to it. You know what I mean? It's just a good tactical, versatile lineman. John, day 3 was full of adventure. I want to talk about this next player specifically, and then we'll blend in the final few.
Sounds good.
Jackson Hawes. Jackson Hawes.
Just a vibe.
Oh. It's just pure nastiness. I love this pick. This is unironically my favorite pick of the draft. I know that sounds so stupid. Unironically my favorite pick of the draft because of the vibes this player brings. Now, do I think he is the best player we drafted? No. Do I think he is going to have a super limited role and he's going to be really freaking good at that limited role? 100% yes. This
dude is the role is?
Nasty as a human.
First and foremost, like the movie Draft Day, this is who you call your pancake eating motherfucker. That is what he is, because he blocks with a tenacity unrivaled amongst men. Like this is the nastiest blocking tight end, H-back, whatever you want to call him ever. And the role is you put he and Alec Anderson on the field at the same time and you say, go hunt. That's the role.
Yes.
And I am for it. Just give me when you want to run that heavy personnel and we are going to obliterate the defense and pound them into the dirt with the ground game 30 times before the third quarter's over. Like just put him out there with Alec Anderson, have one or both of them in motion, just go, just road grade and lead the way. And it is going to be beautiful, awe-inspiring. Like, have you seen the clip of George Kittle a few years ago where he pancaked a defender and rolled over and was laughing, holding his chest? That's the vibe that Hawes brings to the Buffalo Bills. And I am completely here for it.
I love this comment from Pete. A tight end 3 can be your favorite player in a draft class. Mean people are fun. That's awesome. And it's true. This is just, I cannot see a world where this doesn't work out. Now, that's it. It could, I guess, but I'm going to pretend it won't, because again, all we're asking this guy to do is block his ass off with the very occasional receiver ask and the very occasional red zone ask. Maybe more. Maybe that develops, and that could be great. But
this is going to be the guy at the end of the season when they're like, oh, we need to get a 14th guy a receiving touchdown.
Yes.
It's going to be Jackson Hawes
unless
week 18.
See, John, maybe he inherits the spirit of Quentin Morris's clutch touchdown every year. And maybe he does that. Maybe Jackson Hawes is the guy that does it. But down and dirty, physical blocker, your answer in 12 personnel. If you feel like Dalton Kincaid is just going to be better suited for 11 as a receiving tight end and you go wide formation out of it, and when you want to run, you go with the 12P of Dawson Knox and Jackson Hawes, the blocking is going to be nasty as hell. You're going to get so much physicality. The downfield nature of this offense becomes even more aggressive, and he's going to finish the blocks. He has said himself he wants to take people's souls. This is a guy that you just, when you talk about the nasty factor of the Buffalo Bills offense and the Buffalo Bills in general, trying to be a more physical, respected, feared team, what better player to get than a guy who loves just hitting people? It's a perfect pick. It's someone I mocked to the Bills numerous times. I love this pick so much.
He's a glue guy. I mean, he's like this year's, version of Mac Hollins. Like, he's just the glue guy, the personality, the vibe. Like, he's just that dude for the offense, and I love it. And personally, I hope that his role is similar to Mac Hollins, where his job on quarterback sneaks is to stand behind Josh and signal first down. I want Jackson Hawes back there doing the overly dramatic first down signal when Josh Allen plows over somebody. But
yeah. It's just absolute power, dominant game. He's going to be so much fun. Like, just get excited to watch this dude hit people. Don't look at receiving numbers. Don't look at receptions. I'd love for this guy to be George Kittle too. Don't get me wrong. That'd be freaking awesome because we would love to get a tight end that can do everything. But this is a guy that's just meant to hit people, and that's good. And I feel had very big importance in the offense when you talk about depth and what it does for the offensive potential as a whole. And I'm glad they chose him and didn't reach for a gadget speedster that might not have had nearly as much impact or blocking prowess. Sue me. I'm sorry. It's vibes. Jackson Hawes is awesome. This is a pick I love. If he just lays the hammer down this year, like, I'm all the way in on this player. I already am. Now, John, final three. Dorian Strong, Chase Lunt, and Caden Prather. So I'll start with the ending too, because to be honest with you, I had limited knowledge going into it. Obviously, once they picked him, I bought in a little more because I didn't expect them to go for another offensive lineman. I'm dumb for that. I should have expected another Aaron Kromer heat check. So offensive line was a position I didn't really touch in my prep, just because, again, we had pretty much every OL returning, and I felt like even developmental on the back end, there were people there that they took. But this is a player that just also has the nastiness factor. I mean, when he was at UConn and when they would run zone, this is a guy that's just laying, again, the hammer down. It's just an apex blocker. He has a really large frame. I think there's people that speculate he might be able to transition to guard. And I think that would be cool if they felt like it was a project they could undertake to pivot him to that position. If they're looking for a nasty player that might succeed David Edwards. But who else to do that but Aaron Kromer? That's someone I like. And then Caden Prather, again, just getting a speedster that has contested catch ability, that can win at the catch point. I don't really know what the future holds for this player, but it's a receiver, guys. They took a receiver. Now, I was a bigger fan of Ty Felton. Prather wasn't really on my radar, but hey, more bodies in the room. John, before we get to the final player, my tagline tonight, I am asking you about these two players and what you like about them. What do you think the path is for them?
Who? Strong and Chase Lunt?
Lunt and Prather. We'll get to Strong.
Okay. Lunt, great developmental late swing at offensive line, just like you said. I think I like him better at tackle than a guard personally, but I think that you can develop him that way. I think that this is Aaron Kromer. I trust Aaron Kromer. Wherever Kromer sees him, good, cool with me. Chase Lunt is very fluid athletically, 4-year starter at right tackle, so a ton of experience. Didn't allow a single sack this last year. I think his pressure rate was like just over 1%. Like, he's a really strong offensive tackle in terms of his production and keeping the pocket clean, and can move and can get out and move. And that is a trait that this offense likes in their offensive alignment. They need to be able to pull. They need to be able to go do things. They need to, be able to get out in front. I think he's the exact prototype that you're looking for in a late swing at offensive line. And I love it. I think that you should take an offensive lineman every year. That's just my approach to it. You should just take an offensive lineman every year. You can also say you should take a running back every year for that matter, but we don't tend to do that. But you should take an offensive lineman every year, especially to give to Kromer to toy with and develop and see what role you think that you have there. So love that. Prather, not expecting much. I tweeted out a couple days ago, this is going to be the guy that we fall in love with in preseason game number 2, where he catches a long touchdown and inevitably ends up on the practice squad. I'm not really expecting much out of him, but he is a deep threat. He is fast. He can take the top off defenses. So we'll see, we'll see if it's up to him. That's the thing. It's up to him to knock the door down. make a role for yourself, make it so that they can't ignore you, and see what happens. Try to get a role on special teams and work your way up from there. It's a 7th round pick. I'm not really sweating it all that much, but you're taking a swing on athletic traits and a little bit of production too. I think he had 900 yards or something like that. I'm trying to remember offhand. So not a nothing. This isn't like a 200-yard receiver that you said, well, he ran a 4.3, 4.40, so we're going to draft him. There's a little bit more to his game than that for sure. So we'll see what he decides to do.
And as far as Lunt goes, if he stays as a tackle, it's pure tackle. Like, that's fine because he was pure right tackle. In 2024, it was literally 894 right tackle snaps, 1 snap at left guard. But hey, 1 snap at left guard is something I'll hold on my hat to.
You're telling me it's possible.
Listen, I didn't see 0 snaps. I saw 1. I'm buying into it. I'm going to just lead this train until it derails, which is very likely because it's probably not going to happen.
Guard. Future left guard at the Buffalo
Future
Bills.
Left guard Chase Lunt. Hey, if it happens, I'll look like a genius. And if I'm wrong, I never said anything. The show will get deleted.
Absolutely.
No, I'm just kidding. It's a Aaron Cromer heat check. They'll do it every year. They're going to get him a developmental guy. This guy's 6'8", 305. At least that's what it's listed as. It's a take a chance, see what he can do. And I'm never opposed to trying that. And on a day 3, if you want to call it a quote unquote throwaway pick, if they have Cromer in the room and they're just like, hey, got anyone on your board? He's like, let me get this kid from UConn. If that's all it is, it's all it is. But you never know. And if they do decide he is a future depth tackle, I mean, you look at the tackle room beyond Vandemark and there's Grable, and it's like, I could put another body in there just to feel secure. And I mean, when we talk about the traits and what you look for as far as balanced tackle, like Spencer Brown kind of exceeds it with a great athletic profile and freakish height. So why can't Chase Lunt? So I'm okay with just giving him another option. And then for Prather, again, the receiving battle, if they sign Elijah Moore, I don't know where that goes, if there even is one. If they don't sign Elijah Moore, then there's a opening for a spot, and I welcome any competition to it. And I'm not going to be mad to see the guy get a chance when he drafted in the 7th. But my optimism for him making the roster is not high, and I would need to see something in camp to really be shown otherwise. But you'd never want to shy away from it if you still consider it a late need on day 3. So there's nothing wrong with taking the player. I wish the player success, whether he shines and takes the final spot, whether they move on and decide, hey, he's going to go to a different team and maybe do something there. But that's kind of where I stand on it. I'm not going to dig too deeply into it, only because I just don't feel like there's much to extract from the pick itself other than it's a receiver. Let's just take one. And Bean kind of made a joke about it. But let's go back and let's talk about the final player that I want to just really give a little more analysis to. It's Dorian Strong. And this to me was like, I always expected them. And I know you have thoughts about Dorian Strong. I always expected them to double dip at corner. Didn't expect Strong to fall, but he did. No. And we have him now. And I like him as a coverage corner. Again, kind of similar thoughts with Hairston. Like, I just see the potential of him in a primarily zone scheme. Like, you're going to have him just be able to read and react and anticipate effectively and maintain stout coverage. I know he's not as fast as Hairston, so you might see limitations in play speed. So matched up with speedy receivers, you might not want him in that. But if you're talking rotational coverage corner, like especially in a room that has now Hairston, if he actually has that potential, Benford and Trey White in it, like if this is for depth that can, sub in, whether it's for if you think he's a better run defender, whether it's just as a rotational piece, hell yeah, give me this player. And I like him as a coverage corner. So I'm a fan of the pick. What do you think, John?
I'm going to be more bullish than you were. This is a 6'1", 185 man coverage corner that I thought was going top 75. And we got him at 177. 177.
Yeah.
I don't know what the NFL was doing letting him fall. I'm surprised that we took Jackson Haas over him, but they must have just been like, Jackson Haas, hell yeah, and mailed the picking.
Yeah.
But Dorian Strong, I think there's so much to like. Listen, he does not check those boxes in terms of having great athleticism, but he is quick and he is instinctive and he can play man coverage. If there's someone on this team that's going to go from being a late day 3 pick to developing into a future starter on this team, to me, it's Dorian Strong. The way that this team has drafted and developed corners, Benford being the perfect example right now, 6th round pick, same here as Strong. I just think that it's there for him to grow, and he's a gritty competitor and he sticks his nose in it in run support. I think there's just so much that they like, where they probably looked at him and they're like, shit, Dorian Strong's still here. All
Yeah.
right, cool. Like
Yeah.
this is a guy that they brought into the building on a top 30 visit. They've done their work on him. I thought he was in play in the second, or if they were going to let him slip into the third, maybe he was a trade up candidate in the third round, depending on if we went corner in the first. You know what I mean? Like if we went with an edge
Mhm.
or something like that at 30, then maybe they would trade up to get Dorian Strong or something
Mhm.
along those lines. But this is, I think, a great fit. This is a outside corner, a man corner that is great against Rung. I just saw a comment about how he and Hancock are different completely. Yeah, Jordan Hancock
Oh,
can
yeah.
play nickel or safety, and Dorian
Mhm.
Strong is like an outside corner. So
Pure.
very
Yeah.
different roles. They're not like in direct competition with each other for role on this team. Um, just a screaming value. I am
Yeah.
shocked that he was there in the sixth, and he's got a great opportunity to be a meaningful contributor on this team, like in
Mhm.
year two. You know what I mean? Like really
Yeah.
to work his way up the depth chart over the next year or so, where they look at him and go, maybe he's a part of our future plans, and we need to really
Maybe.
consider it.
Tank Ninja here with the classic Bills late round DB whispering. And yeah, you knew this
Yep.
pick was coming. It's tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme. They were taking corner at some point. And I was like, is it Hancock? Like, this is a guy that plays a lot of roles. Like, is that their second DB? And this is your second DB. It's classic Bills. It's just it's a pick that you can never say no to. It's depth. It's addressing the room. It's giving yourself insurance if Hairston isn't panning out, and maybe this player can pan out or be at least stable, which is really what you ask for. If you're talking about a player that I think can be a decent run defender, I think that's there for him. But again, it's just the anticipatory nature of his game, like someone that I feel can really be a good floor player for a McDermott defense that's going to try and move him around and going to have him try play from depth and going to have you to try and stay disciplined and read and react and maintain your zone. That's a guy I like. The man coverage, what the highs and lows of it, whether from college, I wonder what it will be like in the pro level, just because again, it's like if you're facing speedier, stronger receivers, the top end of a team, what does that look like? But I trust DB development more than anything with this defensive room, with these coaching staff. And for that reason, I'm all for this pick. I honestly I remembered around the time that they took this, and I didn't say it. I don't think I said it on the show on Saturday, but I was like, damn, is Kobe Bryant still on the board? Because that was a
Yeah.
player I also really like. Was Zy Alexander still on the board? I didn't, and I had Strong also on my radar, but those were my preferences. But I'm more than happy with this too. And I think that for the Bills, again, you could just never have too many DBs. It's as simple as that. But for a guy like him that has a decent frame, he's not short by any means, not the heaviest guy in the world, not the fastest guy in the world, but I think it's just a perfectly stout, serviceable corner. There's no real reason to hate this pick, and you got it at great value. So for that reason, I hope he can play to third round potential. That'd be fantastic. But even if he's just a rotational solid corner, I think this is a guy that's probably going to take a roster spot from Dane Jackson, probably take a roster spot from Jamarcus Ingram. And then you're going to wind up with a room of Johnson, Hairston, Benford, Strong, and White. And I think that's a pretty solid room if they play to their potential. And that's all I got. John, any final thoughts on the class as a whole? Anything that you want to just mention before we sign off for the evening?
I just think the biggest takeaway is value. This was just a
Mhm.
value-filled draft at direct needs, and I don't know what more you can ask for than that if you're a fan of this team. They
Yeah.
they they had traits in mind that they wanted in terms of we want athletes, we want size, we want speed, we want athletic players with production at direct positions in need, and they went and they got that. They had a few guys that they loved, so they traded up to go get them, um, and they kept just nailing value picks. Dorian Strong being, in my opinion, the biggest example of that. But same thing with Landon Jackson. Value pick shouldn't have been there at 72 and was sitting there waiting for them. Deion Walker was a value because of the injury. Like 3, 4 of these players that they took, were probably around too late. Like they should have been long gone, and they were sitting there waiting for them. So I love it. Obviously, we don't know what the production is going to be, and this goes back to what you said at the beginning, where you're trying to correlate production and process. The process of this, I loved, and I think that the approach to it was great. And now we just gotta, you know, root like hell for these guys to be
Yeah.
successful.
every position that they addressed made perfect sense and was a
Yep.
need. So when we talk about it just from that standpoint alone, I love the draft. Like, I love it. There's no complaints from me about how they approached it when they went very defense heavy, but also fortifying and double dipping and making sure that there are bodies in that room. And then for me, like for offense, like go get an Aaron Cromer heat check on day 3, go get that tight end 3 because Morris isn't coming back, it seems. And then if you could find a receiver somewhere in the mix, do it. And if that's early or good, if it's not, okay, like we'll figure it out. And there's still some options in free agency that we could do it with. I think for me, I'm happy with that. Where my questions lie again is the variance of the prospects and what that looks like. How do they develop? They bet on a lot of traits, which is good because traits matter, but can they coach them up to their full potential to create a class of impact players that shapes their defense and their impact on the rest of the league for the next 5 years, 4 years? If they can do so and they really get the most out of what they got based off their traits, and it's not just projects that are failing, but rather players that you can make stable, fortified members of your rotations at corner, at D-line, even at safety in the case of Hancock, or nickel corner. That will be, something we'll find out in a few years, but I am very pleased with the fact that they attack those needs. And if the traits pan out, we're going to see the most impactful Bills draft class, I think, in the Bean tenure outside of Josh Allen. That is, to me,
that's
what
the upside.
This can be. That's the upside. The upside of like years past had always been you could get great players, you could have a great class. This one is there is like a realistic path for every single one of these players to live up to potential and be just, again, massive long-term contributors mixed with the valued contracts you got. This is a Bean draft that he had to get right. I think fundamentally, position-wise, he got it right. We'll see if the player profile aspect of it and the traits he banked on come to fruition and we end up getting what we really always wanted for this defense and hopefully a Super Bowl as a result. John, I appreciate that. Oh, go. I got you.
We're both long-winded people. The last thing that I want to say is that I came on your show probably in February when we started doing some mocks and we started looking ahead at some stuff. And I said, this time next year, I just want to be talking about one player that turned out to be a damn stud.
Right.
And that's just what I hope to see. Like, I hope that there's a lot of contributors and guys that met kind of their draft slot and their contributions expected to this team. But he drafted players, especially those first 4, that have huge upside. And if one of those 4 guys turns in to be a stud, if Maxwell Hairston turns out to be a stud corner on the outside, if Landon Jackson is the biggest screaming value pass rusher in this class, if one of those guys turns in that type of profile after year 1, God, Bean crushed it.
Absolutely. You just need you just need one and then hope the others are okay or fine. Mm-hmm. Fine. I'm sorry that this is really good. I just came from Twitter. Did someone say Deion Walker is the next Chris Jones? Look at what you did, John. You guys are making him leave even though we're about to sign off. I agree with you that this is a pivotal draft, right? Because they just got out of their old guard of defense. And this past season was the retool where they were put in the spot where they couldn't fully send it on the defense the way they wanted to, right? Whether it was pick limitations, whether there were other pressing needs at different positions. It didn't feel like you had a draft last year where you could just sit back and just throw it at defense over and over. And also the D-line draft just simply wasn't as deep as this one was. This draft was where you could full send it and feel comfortable doing it, especially after the results of the playoffs, to where I am like, yeah, love the philosophy. Just nail it. Just nail it. Get us guys that can be here for years in the future where there's no debate about whether they should stay, clear-cut, defined roles, players that people will buy into where you never have to wonder if they should move on for cap space. Like, I want these players to pan out more than anyone else. But again, the direction they took is a risk. So the risk needs to pay off for Brandon Beane. And my final thought is, despite all the D-line talk, John, I have not given up on Dwayne Carter. I know a lot of you have, and I get it. Rookie season wasn't great. Rookie season, he probably tell you wasn't his best, right? Injury and inefficiency and some knockback. I haven't given up on you, Dwayne Carter. Just know this. I go down with the ship or I rise with the tide. Show out next year, man. If they're giving you that one tech spot, put that damn weight on. Let's get some strawberry Uncrustables in the regiment. Let's freaking do it and nail it. And if you don't, I'll still love you anyways. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you, John. This was so much fun. I love conversations about the draft with you. You're a hell of a guy. Awesome analysis. Give the good people anything. you want to share with them, what you got going on, where they could find you, all the good stuff.
Yeah, on the platform formerly known as Bird App, at John Helmkamp. Just started doing a little bit of freelancing over on SI as well. So go look for the SI Bills content over there. You get some analysis from me over on that page. Doing a little bit of writing about some other teams too here and there, but obviously the Bills have my heart. Yeah, let's hit it up. And hey, you know what? The 2026 NFL draft starts now.
It does start now.
It's always prospect season.
Already sent me a clip of Clemson's D tackle, and yeah, we're rolling. It's like I saw the clip someone posted from Elf. It's like, all right, let's make preparations for next year's Christmas, like right after Christmas happened. That's draft season. Draft season is Christmas, and we are starting Christmas early. John, again, thank you so much. Guys, check out everything he's got going in. Follow him on Twitter if you can. He's just an awesome follow. He'll give you great tweets. He supports the team. Like it's someone that's worth your time and attention, and that's why I get him on here. For me, I'm going to hang the banner that says Joe Revoir. Again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into tonight's episode. It means the world to us that you check us out. If you could like, share this video, and all of the great content we got coming from Disguise Coverage, The Film Room, C1 Buff, Air Raid Hour, everything we do on this network, please show it your support if you are interested or if you just like our channel. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Do what you can to grow this channel. We just hit the 100K mark. Eric's got the plaque. It's super cool. I am just honored to be a part of something that is continuing to grow and have so much success. And it's all because of each and every one of you that supports. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in, for watching. My name is Joe DeRosa. I'll be back next week with another episode as we begin our preview of the AFC conferences. Each team, each one of their roster turnovers over the offseason, what the outlook is for each one of them. I am bringing on a specialist of each conference, a representative of one of the teams, to go over them with me in detail, to look at our contemporaries and see how they're shaping out. I am so excited for this, and I hope you guys are too. And that will start next week. But for tonight, there is dinner to be cooked. I'm going to go eat it. John, I'm sure you probably are hungry, or at the very least want to lay down or something, or enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to let you go do that. I'm going to let you all go do that. Say thank you one more time. See you guys soon. And as always, go Bills.